Hello and welcome to the Rocket Buzz.
Yes, welcome to the Rocket Buzz. My name is Matthew Jordan, and I'll be your host this evening. With me here tonight are Matt Cutshall.
What's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us tonight.
We got Stephen Kegel.
Hello.
Got Kyle Montgomery.
Let's go.
We got producer Derek Wise.
Hello, hello.
And we got good old Zach Shaw over there.
Hey, everybody.
How we all doing this evening?
Doing great.
Good.
Excellent. Well, let's get into this week's news. On Monday, we had a booster return from Turksat 5A. Is that correct? Okay. I thought it was 6. Whatever. 6A. Why is it written as 5A, you guys? Anyhow, it returned on Monday night, and we do have some photos of that. I don't know if those are up.
Kyle was out there as the booster came back into port. You want to talk about the booster return and its significance, Kyle?
Unprecedented for a vertical booster to return during the night. This is the first time ever. It was very uncertain for a while because originally it was set to come in right after sunset, which seemed a lot more plausible than the fact that it was going to come in hours later at night. The last time a booster had returned at night actually was Arabsat 6A, and was the Falcon Heavy Center Core that had fallen over in the ocean. So it was only actually half a booster that returned.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, so being able to come back in the night will be an important step as SpaceX plans to improve the speed of reusability, not having to wait an extra 12 hours to start working on a booster, to be able to just get it in. That'll be extremely helpful.
Absolutely.
To speed up the pace between launches.
Absolutely, and that is one thing that SpaceX has really prided themselves on, is lowering that time required in between launches. The ultimate goal, specifically for Starship, and it was a goal for the Falcon 9 at one point, was that they wanted it to land back on the launch stand where it came from in the correct orientation, so that all they had to do was refuel and go again. Now, that's very complicated from an engineering standpoint, and from just getting it precisely on the launch stand, actually like rotated the right way. So it may or may not happen, but that reusability and getting those rockets back on the pads quickly with another payload is definitely going to be something that we're going to see more of, especially with SpaceX trying to reach into the 40s, 50s, and 60s for a number of launches in a year from Cape Canaveral. We're definitely going to be seeing a lot more quick pace things, and rockets coming in at night, rockets coming in all times a day. It's going to be a lot for you port rats over there to really.
Yeah. And I think personally that this is actually was a test for them, because we saw not too long ago that they actually have lights on the cap itself. So those lights help them to steer it onto, attaching to the top of the booster, so that they can take it off the drone ship and then start processing. And that, like we just discussed, if they don't have to wait those hours to get it processed, they can get it processed and get ready for the next launch. I mean, this launch we have coming up tomorrow for the Starlink launch, this is the 8th timer. This booster will be flying for the 8th time, and it just had a very quick turnaround, because that last launch was the Sirius launch that just happened in December. So this is actually not only the first time that they're launching for the 8th time, this is actually the first time. This is the quickest turnaround for them. So SpaceX continues to break records, and it's absolutely amazing.
Absolutely. And they're going to continue to do so, because they do have that singular focus of dropping the cost of spaceflight, and every minute you can shed or to take off of how long it takes to do that process. Every minute, every second does count when it comes to lowering the cost.
On the subject of cost, there is an increased cost of coming in at night. They're charged more by the port in general for that. So it does add costs in some way too.
Yes, it does. And that cost difference for SpaceX is not going to be super expensive, I wouldn't think, because I know, like, from my time on the submarine, the difference between coming in a day and at night was like $15,000 versus $25,000 to pay for the captain of the ship and
It's
their services.
It's thousands, not millions.
Yeah, it's thousands, not millions. So it really is, compared to the cost of the rocket and what they're making on it. That's chump change. They're going to be willing to toss that away if that means that they're going to get those rockets back up in space faster.
If they don't have to, like, I only see them doing this when they're rushing in some way. Like, if they have a few launches going quickly in concession, I can see them doing night returns. But, like, say they don't have a launch for another week after it comes back, they're probably going to take their time, bring it in during the day, save a little bit.
Yeah, there's also the crew to consider. The crew that is going to be taking care of that. So
on that subject, there's another difficulty of coming in at night. It's a lot less safe for the crew. It's more dangerous by far.
Yeah, working at night in the port's always going to be more dangerous. But I mean,
yeah, like, we don't know when they did the crew transfer for this, because GoQuest came in a while before. It came in during the day, so there's a chance they did that crew transfer all the way back then, like 6 or so hours before it actually came in, and they did it during the day like that, because we can't really tell. Or they could have done it from a tug, and we just couldn't tell because it was tracking. It's hard to tell without directly looking.
And the main delay for it coming in was, I believe, the cruise ships coming in and out of port, and so they had to make way for them. And so
it wasn't a direct huge delay. Like, they still ended up coming a while after a cruise ship already cleared, but, like, yeah, it creates issues. Cruise ships do.
Yeah, it does. But I mean, that's what you're going to have coming in and out of a major port like that. And Port Canaveral is probably one of the busiest ports in all of Florida.
I think it's the second busiest in the world, maybe.
Yeah, it's like the second busiest in the world. It's definitely by far going to be the busiest.
Although,
in Florida.
If the cruise ship industry doesn't survive,
let's not talk about that. I got a lot of friends who work in the cruise ship industry, my friend.
SpaceX will take up some of the slack, and we'll get some other launch providers in there soon enough.
Yes, there will be more launch providers coming in there soon enough. It's a booming time around here. It really is for the Space Coast.
Speaking of other launch providers, Rocket Lab had an attempt this week. Now, they did unfortunately scrub. They had strange data from an inclinometer. And like they said, it's not used for flight, but they want to understand it. And so they're taking their time. They have a nice big 10-day window. So we'll wait and see when they actually are able to launch. But they were not able to launch this week like they had planned.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. But once again, with Rocket Lab, they're doing the smaller rocket. It's a smaller rocket. It's smaller payloads. So they do have longer launch windows that they're able to build those opportunities in. So something small like an inclinometer, they just want to understand why it was giving those issues, because that's going to be something that's electrical down in the actual wiring. Because essentially what an inclinometer is a small, it's curved about like that, small level with a bubble, and it's actually going to be mercury on either side and then a bubble, the same kind of thing that you would find in like a thermostat in an older house. And that bubble represents like a gap in the actual electrical wiring. So when the bubble goes one way or another, there's small wires in there to tell it exactly how tilted the rocket may be so that they can line it up correctly. That inclinometer issue, obviously the rocket was sitting upright, so that wasn't the issue. It purely electrical. They'll get that worked out pretty easily.
Yeah, and it wasn't flight critical like they were saying, so it's just about knowing. That's the only thing.
It's about knowing, because when you know that it's not going to be an issue. But even if it doesn't look like an issue, if you don't know it's not an issue, it could still be an issue.
It could also unveil issues in other parts of systems, because theoretically it could be how the sensor was connected in some other way that could be connected to a lot more critical sensor potentially like that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, data is valuable. And so
data is
the time
incredibly
to get
valuable.
This data, and then making sure you have good data for the next test is important.
Excellent. Also, speaking about other launch providers, we did see a Blue Origin New Shepard flight. Let's see. I don't have the actual date that happened. But we did have a full New Shepard flight. They had several small payloads on this flight that we're riding along with. It's kind of a test flight, and they do want to ramp up into actual having their commercial passenger flights starting no earlier than April. That's kind of like where they're setting that date. Now, that date has moved back. They were planning on last year in April, and then COVID happened. So we've kind of been sitting here waiting and really expecting something good to happen. I knew this was going to happen last year, and then it didn't happen because of the world events. So now we're sitting here like, oh, okay, it's still going to happen. It's still going to happen. So we're just kind of sitting here waiting for it, and it's going to be really fun to see the new Glenn launch from Florida when the time comes. That's going to be an awesome sight to see.
I want to point out this drone shot in the webcast because it is just absolutely beautiful. The way they have the drone and they fly up right past it. That is some expert coordination between their teams to make sure you can do that safely. And we've seen great drone footage from other launch providers like SpaceX before, and that just looks great. I want to point that out.
Drones is the way to go. And also, so this launch happened, it says right here on the screen on the 14th. And also, like Jordan just talked about, inside the Shepard, inside the capsule was Mannequin Skywalker. Now, we've seen this happen a few times. We've seen this happen with Riley with SpaceX. We've seen this happen with Rosie with the Boeing capsule. And what it is they put these dummies inside there that are embedded with all kinds of sensors. And what it's doing is it's reading data that is getting, what kind of pressure is being put on what would be a human, and then they read that data and see where they need to fine tune to get it to where it is human rated so they can start launching people. So that was a neat part about this launch as well.
And this was also the first launch with the newly redesigned interior that has the actual passenger upgrades installed, because up until now they've been kind of like a blank interior. The windows were there and everything, but they've been launching it with the blank interior. Now they have all the passenger stuff there. They are getting ready to ramp up and start taking people. And it's an exciting time for people who have that kind of money, I guess.
It's amazing. We didn't get any live views during the stream, but afterwards they, of course, tweeted out this video from inside that capsule. You can see the mannequin right there. And
Mannequin
they were talking about how they have the very slow spin so that regardless of what window you're at, you're able to see at one point in every direction. And I mean, they're really planning to fly humans, and that's a big deal.
And if anybody watching has kids, you can go to Club of the Future, which is a program that is sponsored by Blue Origin, and you can actually send in a postcard, and they will fly the postcard in the capsule. And then once it comes back, I think Jeff stamps a couple of them that it was certified that it was flown in space, and they'll actually send that back to you, so you can have your own flight proven postcard, basically. So
that's pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
That's some pretty cool stuff.
All I need is a kid.
No, it's a trap. You don't want that. All right. Next up on our list here, we had a Starship static fire.
We had Artemis. Before that, we had...
we did.
We had two different events that happened this week. Kyle, I want to talk a little bit about this whole Path to the Pad event.
So basically they just took us on a tour of the VAB. They had a booster segment out there for us to photograph, and they weren't actually moving anything while we were there, which is kind of disappointing. But it's still massive and really great to see everything that's going on in the VAB as they're working towards their first Artemis launch. You can see the Noble launcher. I've seen it outside when it's moving on the crawler way. It only makes the VAB seem bigger when you see it inside of the VAB.
Yeah, because the VAB dwarfs it.
And this,
it's like
of course,
you realize how big it is having stood next to it, and then you go into the VAB, and it's like it's tiny inside the building, right?
I mean, I've been on the 6th, 1st, and 16th floor now, so
yeah, that's a ginormous building. I've only ever seen it from the outside, personally.
And this is, of course, one of our articles by Zach, and so be sure to check out our website We try to put up articles for all the major events, combining all the photos and everything. So go give this one a read. It's a good one.
Absolutely.
And so
I'm loving this stuff. It's good to see that our investment as Americans is finally starting to come to fruition. This has been, if you really want to think about it that way, this is going all the way back to the early 2000s when the Constellation program was put into effect. This is essentially the same program, just rebranded. It uses the same technique of reusing older hardware that they had laying around, the extra stuff from the space shuttles, and using those things to actually make the program cheaper, but it didn't end up being cheaper the way we thought it would. But it's a good thing to have this, and even though there are better launchers in the world, we haven't seen this one operate yet.
They're not launching commercial sets.
This is not going to be launching commercial sets. This is solely for the purpose of exploring space, and that is unique for this rocket, and going to the moon and going beyond the moon. That their first mission is going to go out beyond the moon.
And the first mission is the circle around the moon.
Yeah, it's going to circle around the moon.
Yeah, just like Apollo.
Can you really put a price on going to the moon?
I mean, you can't.
Yeah, there's a price.
Really want to delve into how much Apollo cost over the 15 years that it ran. Excellent. I'm loving all these great pictures and Orion.
So many great shots in here. It's hard to not just keep scrolling and looking through them because y'all did a great job out there.
It's the opposite of doom scrolling. We've invented hope scrolling.
Yeah. So, of course, you got to see it exit the building. So, all right.
The little Orion was actually pretty funny because we first got into that building and we didn't have anywhere to go immediately. And that little Orion with the solar panels out, it was in the lobby, and we all just started immediately taking pictures of just the little Orion. We're going to see the real one, but let's take pictures of the little one too.
Yeah, why not? You're there. Why not?
Excellent. All right. What's next on our list here?
We do have the Starship SN9 static fires that took place, and they are replacing 2 Raptors right now. So it'll be a bit till we see it fly, but they're trying to speed it up. So we did get a tweet from Elon. He was saying that he wants to get the time down to hours, not days. Let me pull that up. So he said that 2 of the engines need slight repairs, and they'll be switched out, and they need to get the time for an engine swap down to a few hours at most.
And that's definitely going to be something that they want. Once again, it's one of those things. They're going to set this is how fast we can do it, and then they're going to continuously make it go faster and faster and faster until they get it down to like a target time that they want to be hitting. That's especially important for what they can do with Starship, because Starship is also capable of doing like suborbital flights all over the world. And if they're going to be doing that, and it's going to be used in that type of way, they are going to need the ability to swap those engines out very quick, because that's something that's going to get used up very quick.
One interesting thing is that is a faster engine swap than any car or any plane or it's probably the fastest engine swap in the world, and it's one of the most complicated engine swaps in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it just goes to show how much they really need to, how much they're innovating with the time and the development to really get it tuned down like this. If you can actually, if they're able to go find an issue with an engine, swap it, and then launch later that day, that'd be crazy. That's not something that is remotely in the realm of possibility for any other vehicle. Like,
they also have to do that in some ways, because on rockets, the engine is a lot more of a wear item compared to, say, a car. The cars can go 300,000 miles, 1,000,000 miles on the same engine. Well, I guess if you compare it directly miles, the rocket can go farther. But if you compare time, your fire don't last forever.
Yeah, you're only going to get, I think right now with the Merlin Ds, they're looking at maybe 10 launches before they have to do a whole scale replacing parts and things like that. On the Raptors, I'm assuming they're going to have the same kind of thing where they need to swap them out every 10 or 20 launches, depending upon, how robust the engines are and how much of that wear they're able to take.
Yeah. Another note is swapping doesn't necessarily mean retirement. They could swap out everyone on there every 10 flights if they can do it that fast, and then they'll refurbish them over a week, and then in another week they'll swap those out with the ones they just put on it, and just a forever cycle of refurbishment, pretty much.
Yeah, and the great thing is they're starting to ramp up that production, so they have lots of Starship parts just sitting there ready to be built, and that's kind of what we need, is that they're working on this rocket while they're working on this rocket while they're working on this rocket, and they have several teams that are all working at the same time at different stages, essentially. And when they get to the production cycle, it's going to pass between those teams. Oh, okay, we finished this part, we're going to send it to you, and you're going to do this part, and it's just going to go down the line, almost like a I don't know, like the Ford process. Yeah, like a production line.
As it happens, I believe that I believe John Krause got some photos as the engines were being driven off, and they were so telephoto that they were able to read the labels on some of the actual parts. And it was from a previous Raptor. I'm trying to find those.
I think that might have been Jack Beyer.
Was it?
Because he did a panorama of it with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The super high res stuff. Looking.
So they were actually.
Yeah, it was.
They're already getting to reusing parts from one engine to the next.
And they're pretty far along their iterative process at that point, if they're able to take parts off of one and put it onto another one and make it work. Absolutely. They're working the process as it should be worked. I mean, swapping an engine doesn't mean you have to have a whole brand new engine. Take the part out, fix it, and put it back into another one.
Yeah,
like when you rebuild a car engine.
Exactly.
A very high resolution image of the engine.
That is just so much beautiful.
That's beautiful. And then,
a lot of craftsmanship.
You can see
a lot of craftsmanship, and that's
so that
QC nightmare.
That Raptor is serial number 44, but I'm not very familiar with the specific parts, but on this section of tubing, that is marked SN34. So that's the fact that they're using different parts. Yeah. That's cost saving. That's time saving. Oh, yeah. Like
cost saving, time saving. That's all right the things that SpaceX represents, really.
Yep.
And it's a good thing. I hate to sound like a SpaceX fanboy. I really try to be as objective as possible doing this job, but it's hard not to like everything that SpaceX is doing when it comes to launches and when it comes to the way they operate the business, because I'm not seeing anything that I'm like, man, they should do that better. Maybe they shouldn't. Maybe Elon shouldn't talk as much about the engineering side of things, because yes, he's an engineer, but he doesn't have his hands touching everything at SpaceX. You know what I mean? I don't know if he's in there turning wrenches. He might be. I heard he doesn't sleep very much, and he has a bed at every factory. And I
heard he has a couch at every factory.
I heard he slept underneath his desk or on his desk before, so there's that too.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's a workaholic. I don't know how he has time for kids and family and girlfriend and all that stuff, but.
So Harry's saying he's heard that the nozzle number doesn't always match the engine itself. So it may be that the engine itself as a unit is referred to as SN34.
Yes, and I was actually kind of, while you were mentioning, I was thinking the same thing, because now I'm working in a production manufacturing area myself. When I'm building the stuff I build, I have several parts and pieces that come with a serial number already on them, and then I actually put it into a computer database saying this serial number for this part went onto this serial number for the whole thing. So it might be something like that, where the serial number for the engine is 44, but it's got a part 10,044 over here and a part 34 here and a part 10 over here, depending upon whatever the serial number is.
And we don't have an inside look at how SpaceX is naming it. And we actually learned that somewhat recently with the boosters, because we've always been saying like B1051.3. Apparently, internally, SpaceX does a dash rather than a point.
Yes.
And so it's like
I like our
little
points.
minor things that we just don't know, and it's just gleaning information slowly. And so I only learned that a few weeks ago that they
Elon,
use
start
the
sharing the
dash.
inner workings.
Yeah, I'm all about
the
learning
beans.
everything that we can learn about their process and about how if they come up with an issue midway through the line, how does that process work as compared to where like another manufacturing facility might work? I'd like to see where those differences lie, because obviously they're doing something right and they have a lot of efficiency where some companies might not have as much efficiency. Maybe someone who studies those things should do like a research study into how they run their manufacturing process as opposed to, a Boeing or someone like that. That would be very interesting. Maybe I should do that. All right. And then let's see. We had the SLS hot fire test, which was yesterday.
Yeah, so
Yes.
that, man, it does not feel like yesterday.
Yeah, it feels, well, let's just say 2020 was the longest decade of our lives. So now time just feels like it's going super fast.
So they were planning to have a full duration 8-minute firing of all 4 engines. And apparently, I believe about 4 minutes was necessary to get like all the data. Like they were going for at least 4 minutes, but they were targeting 8 minutes, basically. And
They got
so
a minute.
you can see all the water, and I mean it's amazing that the igniters go off.
The
They ignite,
Rofies. Mhm.
and it's beautiful watching all that, and the amount of steam, because like that's not smoke, that's just steam from all the water being boiled off, and actually it quite literally made it rain because of all the water vapor.
Now, if they would have went for the full 8 minutes, then it really would have rained. They still got a rainbow. They still got a real nice rainbow from this. But if it
Look
would
at
have went
that.
the full 8,
Yeah, look at those beautiful engines. It's like
4 engines.
like shuttle days.
And yes, those are beautiful. And when they do launch this thing, those are going to be nice and bright because they are hydrogen oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be just as bright as, say, like the Delta IV Heavy.
It's gonna be loud.
It's going to be super loud. Plus, it's going to have SRBs on both sides. Holy mackerel, this
It's
thing's going to
gonna
be
be-
loud, and it's going to jump right off the pad, too.
I can't
Yep.
wait to see it launch.
Lylinda will be closed.
Yes, Playa window will definitely be closed for the launch of this
Yeah,
guy.
especially in B.
But I
Yeah.
want to go
Closer.
there. I would watch it from there. That'd be
Now,
dangerous.
I was
So you
going to
can
say,
see
now,
here,
with the...
it starts to
Okay. Yeah, there's the shutdown. Starting.
yeah, that's where things sort of go odd, and now you can see they're shut down, and they didn't get their full duration. They had
Like 1 minute and 21 seconds or some. It was not anywhere near the full
it was not
duration.
near their goal, and they said there was what was it, main component failure, and so they weren't actually able to get to gimbaling the engines,
Right.
which was very important because I believe they operated at like 109% thrust, and they were going to throttle down and gimbal them, and they did not get to that portion, and so yeah, you can see the live chat started freaking out when they saw it didn't get their full duration. Now, what this means long term, we haven't been given full info. The live stream, they seemed to go off a script as if everything went perfectly, saying that they would patch up the outside and send it down here, but it's very
It's
possible
probably
that
going to
this
need
is,
another test.
Yeah.
yeah, and it'll be a decent. They're
To my
going to look into
understanding.
it, and I really hope it doesn't mean a delay. I really want to get Artemis launching soon. Hopefully they are
This is
able
NASA.
to
It will
quickly.
be.
I really want it to happen soon. I'm going to stay optimistic. We haven't been given solid info as to whether or not it will be delayed or how much or anything. They're looking through the data. They were saying there are hundreds and hundreds of terabytes of data that they've been gathering for this.
70,000.
To my understanding, right, the core stage has to get to Kennedy by the end of February if they're going to launch this year.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
Now they might be able to do. Well, see, here's the thing: they don't have the kind of production line that like a SpaceX has, where they have more of those engines just on standby, ready to get swapped out.
right.
They have plenty of engines. They got tons of
Yeah,
them.
they still have to test
But
those engines.
I don't know
too,
how
though.
easy they are to swap.
Probably not as speedy and efficient as SpaceX.
Yeah, but they got plenty of them.
Because once they start stacking those SRBs, the time starts. The time
Yeah,
is
the
ticking.
timer starts. Yep.
It's already started, I
was
believe.
going to point out that if this thing shut down at 121, which it did, the SRBs would still be burning during an actual launch if it had shut down at that point. Even with the escape system, we're glad we saw this shut down on the ground. Number one, this is why we test. This is why everybody tests, to make sure it's going to work in the actual situation. If this kind of thing had happened in flight, yes, there is an escape system. During the SRB phase, I really don't know if it could make it and actually pull the actual Orion capsule free.
I just thought of something. Potentially, since it's safely shut down, they don't technically need to escape immediately. Theoretically, they could ride out the whole entire burn of the SRBs and then activate the escape tower.
That's true.
And I assume smart people work at NASA than me, so I assume they've thought about this. There might be an option.
Yeah, I would want to look through the actual the fail mode and see what that procedure looks like. Unfortunately, they don't make those public.
We might get that in like 50 years when
One
the
of
documents
the
become public.
things with the this causing a potential delay that would be a challenge is just last week we were talking about how they're stacking the solids, and they're on the clock now. Those can go bad. They have a limited lifespan, and so if this is delayed too much, those SRBs are trash.
Yeah. We were talking. I was talking to someone in when we were up on the 16th floor of the VAB, and it's because there's an expiration date on the solid fuel. Pretty much is what it is. Comes down to. Like not it's the stacking itself; it's the solids themselves.
It's the solid once the actual the fuel is exposed to oxygen, it only has that 1 year lifespan.
Yeah,
The best buy date is a lot more strict when it comes to rockets than it does to the grocery store.
Best launch date.
Use by date. The use by date. There you go.
Launch before.
Excellent.
Well, it is still a best buy date because there's a good chance they're still going to work after that date. But do we want to put people on them after that date? Probably not.
Probably not. No, they're NASA, especially as risk averse as they are going to not do that.
Yeah, they need to just take every precaution because like we need this to be a perfect safe program, and so
yes,
they need to take this time, as awful as it is. And as much as I'm saying I don't want to delay, if it means better safety, take the delays. That's what has to happen. So
excellent. All right, and then the final thing on my list, or not the final thing, but one of the last things on my list here is the CRS-21 return.
The reason we are tired.
The reason they are all tired, I did not go to the port, but the reason most of these guys are tired is they were out at the port taking some pictures and getting us some good shots of the Dragon return to port here in Cape Canaveral. Now, Dragon did land in the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's see here. These notes make no sense to me, man.
To me, it's funny because, SpaceX, they have 7 recovery locations for the Dragon capsule. The primary locations, of course, all being on the Atlantic side, as it's closer, easier to home. And we've all been looking forward to, the Atlantic splashdown. We've got 2 now, both in like the farthest locations possible away, the hardest locations to get it back to home, both in the Gulf of Mexico, So
you and I know from experience how far Pensacola is.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so Kyle was out there when it first splashed down. Of course, they brought the capsule onto Go Navigator. The helicopter landed on Go Navigator, and they took the most time-sensitive cargo, and they loaded it onto the helicopter, and they flew it. And so Kyle managed to get this photo in the very, very dark of the helicopter on its way to Kennedy.
I didn't think it was going to go as fast as it was, so I kind of procrastinated to leave. So then I ended up getting there probably maybe less than 5 minutes before it got over there, and I was at Max Brewer, so I was expecting to get to climb to the top of the bridge, set up a tripod, be ready. It started coming, and so I panicked, started setting up a tripod, and then I was like, it's coming too fast. I got to get the camera ready. So I freehanded it all, and there was 2 frames like that one that actually were good enough to consider posting. The rest were literally a speck of light.
Working with the dark. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
man.
We got out there pretty late. Kyle was on the beach and then joined us by the Freddie Patrick boat ramp. Go Navigator was coming in. We thought it was going to be going into the Navy side. Like we thought it was going into the military port. And then it kept on going.
We're just sitting here and we're just like, what? What's going on? Wait, why is it not
Where
starting?
is it going?
It's going. Why is it? It's not stopping. What's going on? Yeah, it ended up going into the middle Trident Basin instead.
And
their
we didn't know that
the whole time. You missed your turn.
So we're all freaking out. We're like, why is it not stopping?
Now it did have the lights on, which was very nice, and the Dragon was uncovered. And by not going into the military base, we got a much better view of Dragon. So
yes, we did.
It came right by us. It was pretty nice, and then it kept on going, so we were like, all right, we're driving farther down the port. And so we all rushed down there, not knowing where it's going, and then we shouldn't have gone farther down the port because it turned off.
Well, to be fair, there's nowhere great for them. There's nowhere great for the middle basin anyway, so like,
yeah,
like our best bet was where we ended up going, pretty much, because, yeah.
And
so you guys were out there really late. Like, what time did it finally end up coming in?
3:30 or so.
3:30 is the timestamp of my photos. I think 3:37 was the last one at the boat ramp before we left, and I think I got home at about 5 a.m.
Were you guys like the only people out there for that too?
Yes. Yeah. It was amazing. It was completely empty. There was a police officer who parked in the parking lot for a little bit.
Yeah,
but
it was cold. It was very cold.
He was just there to keep you guys safe.
Very cold. And so you can see it way back there. It just turns into the middle basin there.
Yep.
That is awesome. I love going out there, but not at 3:30 in the morning. I'm not.
Yeah, it was cold.
Yeah, but we got the nice scorch marks. They had the bright lights going. Like you can see, they only covered the what they had to. We got some nice viewing. We can see the NASA logo there. Like. Can't complain about the views.
Not at all. That's just awesome.
It's always hard to get captures in the dark.
The entire coverage of the return, it was us and Jenny out there. So
awesome. You guys are killing it out there at the port.
Dedicated.
Killing it out there at the port, I'm telling you.
It was cold.
Dedication, your frostbite, All right, and then we had a Virgin Orbit flight.
Yeah,
who's got the talking points on that?
Yeah, so this was actually today. We were getting live tweets from Virgin. We didn't get live streams or anything like that, but this is a big one. This is really, really important because they reached orbit. So we of course got the info right when they were starting. Like they're always good at live tweeting. They gave the timeline, and that timeline actually gave people a little bit of worries when points were passed without notifications. It's just they just didn't tweet about it yet. They were waiting on comms. So we got it was deployed, ignited. We've seen they've been trying to get proper they've been trying to get a proper launch and orbit from Launcher 1 for a while, and so it's really good to finally see this going. It deployed 8 different CubeSats into orbit. So they're...
And we did have coverage for this lined up. One of our other guys on the team, Justin, he had all plans on being out there to cover it. And unfortunately, he did end up hurting himself on the running. He rolled his ankle, so he was not able to be out there to provide the coverage for us. So we preferred that he obviously stay home and get better.
Absolutely.
So
this is just, it's another way to get things to orbit. This is companies coming up with different options. Hey, we see that they can launch missiles from planes. Can we launch a rocket from a plane? Yes, we can.
Yeah, having another commercial launch provider is such a big deal. And
on the subject of launching rockets from planes, they've done this a lot of times actually before, but just not Virgin Orbit. Pegasus.
Yeah, just not Virgin Orbit. Pegasus was launched from planes, absolutely.
Which Pegasus also had a lot of issues.
Yes, it did.
I think the last Pegasus missile to launch, I think it was technically still one left, but the last one to launch, I think it launched finally like 2 years or so after it was initially slated to launch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the vertical launch systems are you overcome a lot of the gravity differential, so it doesn't require as much fuel, but you pay with instability issues of actually igniting the engines while in the sky. There's instability issues that happen there. There's a lot more technical issues with the vertical launch as opposed to your standard horizontal launch like we normally see.
Pegasus issues were mostly electronical and control systems, not actually, but you do need a lot more control systems for that because it needs to free fall for a little bit and control stuff plane-like for like at least 10 seconds before it has to
it has to control it, clear the plane.
Yeah
so its control surfaces have to be more active than normal rockets.
It can't just use gimbaling like a lot of rockets do.
No, it has to have the actual fins on the outside have to be able to allow it to glide a little bit before it actually ignites. So but it's good to see the Virgins getting there and finally able to do this. This is like their second attempt, third attempt. It's good to see they got there. Virgin's also going to be starting up their commercial passenger service. I believe I read somewhere Richard Branson said that he's planning his flight for, say, June. It might have even been earlier, but I know his mother just passed away. So our hearts go out to Mr. Branson. And keep your spirits up, sir.
We got a video 25 minutes ago from them of the deploy
nice
and ignition.
Nice timing.
This is my first time seeing it right now.
Damn, that makes 2 of us.
Yeah, so thank you for pointing that out, Harry.
Look at it go.
Look at that.
That's got to be something really cool to do as a pilot, too. Like, that's not something you do every day.
Definitely not.
Especially not from, like, a 747.
I wonder if the pilot is, a pilot is, that's their only job, or if they just have, like, a random, like, other pilot that does other work that just randomly comes in for it.
I'm not sure.
Because, like...
I would expect they've had plenty of specific training... for that. So they might have taken like I'm very sorry, I'm not more familiar with it, but they probably took a commercial pilot or someone with that level of experience and then gave them a great deal of work specifically with the maneuvers necessary for launching. I
don't think it would be that complicated to find someone who's used to this kind of thing, even though it's from a 747, it's a commercial plane launching a rocket essentially. But not most, but a vast majority of pilots are previously military trained pilots. So if they hired someone who had a lot of experience with, say, fighter planes, they launch missiles like that regularly from fighter planes, even just for practice. Because with the government, if you don't spend the money, you're not getting it next year. So in like September, especially if you live near an Air Force base, you're going to hear a lot of flights happening because they're trying to burn off the fuel that they received for the year so they get more next year.
Yes. So Michael's saying they confirmed 9 small sats for NASA were deployed. I think I said 8 earlier. I'm sorry about that. And he also pointed out the 737 is designed with the ability to carry a spare engine on the left side of the plane, and so that's where they actually
that
launched
weight differential. Yeah, the weight differential will be on the left hand side because it's designed to hold that extra weight.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. What else do we have on our list here? All right. The last one is actually me, and this the NASA released this on Monday, but it's more of a policy thing, sort of, but it also has to do with existing missions. So NASA actually released information on Monday that they will be extending both the Juno mission to Jupiter and the Mars Insight mission. Now, the Mars Insight mission is going to be extended by 2 years, and that's going to be collect further seismic data from the Martian surface as well as weather data. And then the Juno mission extension, which will be for 4 years, will actually allow that mission to do flybys of 4 Jovian moons that haven't been flown by in 20 years, and that's going to include Europa. And that's what's super exciting for me because Europa is one of those spots in the solar system that we know has liquid water, and every indication we know is that life requires liquid water to exist. So we really want to get there, and there's Europa Clippers going to be coming up in the next decade, so that's going to be fun to watch, and this is just kind of like a precursor for that, and we're going to get some excellent views and some good scientific data specifically about Europa and Io. All right. So next week.
That's most of the news for this week. It was surprisingly busy despite no launches from the Cape. There was a lot happening.
Absolutely. So next week we do have a Starlink launch that our week starts tomorrow. Starlink 8:45 tomorrow is what I have written down here, and I believe that's
39A. Another Starlink. We know the drill at this point. It's a Falcon 9. It'll be launching.
Falcon 9. It makes
60 satellites. They're going into low Earth orbit.
It's a cut and paste article. We got that. All right. And then we have Thursday, we have the Transporter 1 mission is scheduled from Slick 40, and we'll be landing on Just Read the Instructions. Yeah. And Transporter 1 is kind of a fun thing that SpaceX is doing, is that they are making available all this space that they normally would fill with Starlink satellites or ginormous communication satellites, and they're filling it with smaller CubeSats type satellites. And it's essentially spreading that cost amongst all the people. They get a very cheap flight to space, and they're going to put 2 Starlinks up with it anyway because they had a couple of satellites that didn't make it. So they filled that space in with Starlink.
Like 93 satellites going up.
Yeah, it's a lot of satellites. It's for science, especially for Earth science. This is going to be a very important mission, just because a lot of the Earth science that's being done now is being done by colleges and smaller organizations that might not necessarily be able to put like a GOES satellite into orbit, but they can put a small sat and they can do their research using a small sat, and it's just more cost efficient, and colleges and other smaller research programs can definitely get in on space research, and SpaceX allows that to happen. The shuttle allowed that to happen. So it's a great thing that we can have a mission like Transporter 1 coming up and have cheap flights for lots of people at one time.
Yeah, and it's going south, so that'll be another, not brand new, but SpaceX has done 1 launch south, and now they're going south and landing on the drone ship down there. Tomorrow's launch, the Starlink, that is the 8th first reuse. We did kind of brush over it being a Starlink.
We did.
It's fast turnaround. It's a record turnaround time, and it's an 8th reuse. So it actually is really important. And also, Michael pointed out something we did miss. So NASA did announce this week that they are ending their efforts to bury probe. Let me pull this up.
Well, that's what Jordan was talking about. The mole. They're not doing the mole anymore. The mole has ended, but they're going to extend the mission 2 years with the InSight.
Yeah, so
and that comes down to cost, because both InSight and Juno were like billion-dollar missions. So being able to extend that mission just means that that's more money not having to be spent to send the same equipment up and take the same kind of readings. If the equipment's there and it's still working, you might as well keep using it and keep pulling that data, because it's much cheaper to run a mission that's already started than to start a brand new one.
Yeah, so they've been trying to bury the probe, and they just it's a different soil than they were used to and expecting.
Yeah, it was much more dense than they were expecting, so the probe didn't actually go but a few inches into the soil. They were expecting like meters and got inches, and it was not the best thing to happen. But InSight's still getting lots of
they're learning.
data.
They're extending, like they said, they're burying the seismometer cable to continue getting that data. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, and what else do we have on our list here? I believe we are at the point of the week where we share our favorite pictures.
Zach, do you got a history lesson?
Do have some history.
Oh, well then we'll go with the history lesson. Let's do it.
All right. So this week in history, I'm just going to go ahead and get this one out of the way. It's, probably seen some stuff on social media. January 16th, yesterday, which was, of course, the last flight of Columbia, the 28th and final flight. I just learned, actually, it was also the 113th launch of the space shuttle. I'm a superstitious person, so to me, I'm like, oh no. But I'll cover more of that when the end of the mission happens in 2 weeks. I'll go into a little bit more detail, but it actually launched yesterday in 2003. Now, just stay with me. We're going to go way, way back. I just found this really interesting. Today, in 1886, a gentleman named Glenn L. Martin was born. Glenn L. Martin, like I said, stay with me. It comes around. He was a pretty smart, talented man. By the time he was 10 years old, he was making and selling his own box kites, right? So in 1896, he was selling box kites to the world. In 1909, at 23 years old, this guy flew his first biplane that he built himself. He rented out an old church that was abandoned, and he found the owner. He rented out. He built his own biplane in it, started flying around, started a company, the Glenn L. Martin Airplane Company, started selling airplanes. He, by the time World War II came around, he was the U.S. military's #1 airplane manufacturer. His most famous plane, the B-26, the Marauder, they called them flak bait back then because they picked up so much flak over enemy territory. He died in 1961, in 1961, 6 years after he died. The company merged with American Marietta. I'm not too sure what they did, but in 1995, the company merged again and gave us what we know today as the Lockheed Martin Corporation. So that's a little bit about the founder. You guys know Lockheed Martin is huge in the aerospace industry. Real interesting stuff I found. Now we'll go further in time, but yesterday, January 16th, 1969, Soyuz 5 docked with Soyuz 4 in low Earth orbit. This was the very first time two manned space capsules or spacecrafts, whatever you want to call it, docked together, and they changed crew. Literally the first time, actually, to my understanding, it's the last time that how do you say it? Hold on, what did I write?
Uh-oh.
Sorry. So it's the old, I guess it's just as simple as that. It's the only time a crew transfer ever took place using a spacewalk. They literally climbed out of one capsule and switched capsules.
Wow.
But that was pretty crazy. So
I wouldn't.
yes. Now, also today in 1985, the United States launched its 1037th and the final aerobie rocket, a sounding rocket. Sounding rockets are, if you guys don't know, they're tiny rockets. They're not like, Falcon 9s even. They're about 30 feet long, most of them 150 pounds. The aerobie rocket was America's most used sounding rocket. They could fly to an altitude of 170 miles. And they basically, like small sats, CubeSats is what they did. A lot of, stuff, suborbital stuff, measurements, temperature, pressure, radiation, ozone, a lot of just scientific data research. It was cool last year. Actually, it was January last year. I got to tour NASA's sounding rocket facility in Wallops. Wallops, Virginia NASA has a facility. And it was interesting because it's like a rocket factory, but it's just like a little bit larger than my school workshop. And, it's like the tubes, they're just a few inches in diameter and they're all laid out, but it was their program is up there. I found that pretty cool. And 2006, January 19th, the New Horizon mission launch. It was sent up on an Atlas V in the 551 configuration, and it was the very last robotic mission to an unexplored planet. It took a few years, but July 14th, 2015, New Horizons flew by Pluto. It studied its moons and the Kuiper belt all around Pluto. So that was the first time we got to the last unexplored planet. I feel like we've been doing this for so long that I had no idea that it was just a short time ago, really, that we got to Pluto, So I found that pretty interesting. And then my final thing for the week, January 22nd, 1968, NASA launched Apollo 5 on a Saturn 1B rocket. This was the first orbital test of the lunar module ascent and descent propulsion systems. It was unmanned, of course, but it, paved the way to the Apollo missions, send them into the moon.
Ooh.
Yeah. Now we look real ancient history to a year ago Tuesday. That was in-flight abort. That was my very first rocket launch I saw. So that's actually pretty cool. Thank you for pointing that out, Michael.
Everybody got clouded out.
That's next Tuesday, though, so it's moving to be a next episode?
Yeah, come on now.
Talk about it again, I guess.
Awesome. Well, I think we have gone through everything we intended to go through today. I did want to go ahead and once again give our just everlasting thanks to Jameson Boyce, the gentleman who wrote our theme song. He went out of his way and did that for us, and he's an amazing musician. He ran off and joined the circus, and then when the circus was canceled, he came back, and he's been working for a few different arts organizations around Orlando. So I was able to get him to write us some music. So he did a bang up job.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Well, does anybody have anything else to add? No? Okay. And then in that case, it sounds like a show to me. Derek, can you play us out? You guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you next week.
Stay spacey.